Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Money Date. My name is Anna, and I want to talk to you about buckets of money. Well, all I wish for you is to have lots of them. But until we do that, we need to have a proper structure in place so that when we do get our hard-earned dollars, they have a proper purpose. Okay? That's the conversation for today's Money Date. I'm excited to be here. I hope you're having a great week. I am. Certainly, it's been a long day, but I always look forward to having this discussion with you. So, as you're hopping on, please let me know you're here, and I am excited for you. Hi, Marina. Good to have you. I'm excited for you to join. Also, drop a comment in the chat so that I know you actually visited, because otherwise I wouldn't know you were watching. So also, I appreciate you guys sharing this out. It helps spread the message. Now, many of you know what money dates are intended for, but I will like to remind you because you may be forgetting. So money dates are specific time of the day that you pick for yourself to focus on your money, okay? And what I do is I like this kind of thing to take place every week. Now, the reason for the weekly money dates is because it gives you enough time for things to happen, for life to go on. But then once that happens, you have time to come back and reflect. Now, this is a financial show. You guys know that I talk about finances here all the time. So that means when we're having a money date, you can have a money date with yourself. You do not have to have $1 million. You do not have to have money. You just have to want to do better where you started, okay? But the idea is to understand how much money is coming in, to understand where you're spending your money, and to have specific targets and savings goals that you're going to accomplish. Now, the reason for this to do on a weekly basis is because you know how life gets in the way, you know how busy everybody is, and you know how easy it is to get off target. So I propose for you to do those kinds of things. So my idea of having this show is to remind you, because that's when I get to do it. And so when you guys are sitting down to look at something like that, hi Jeff, good to have you here. Hi Ben, you guys are awesome. My comments are a bit slow, so I'm sorry if I'm not catching them right as they come in. I'm gonna try to make sure that I can see them all. So as we're sitting down to look at where we've been so far over the last week with our expenses, some of the tracking tools that I think are useful to put in place, and I know we all have our own little budgets and spreadsheets, maybe perhaps we're using, or not, or we're just building one. Or maybe we use some of these online tools. Whatever it is that you use is fine, right? It's not, I wouldn't be hung up on the idea of using a specific tool. But hi Lisa, good to have you here. Wouldn't be hung up on having a specific tool. I would be really more after the structure, okay? And so that's the reminder of what Money Date is all about. So I challenge you, for those of you who are visiting here for the first time, I appreciate you guys watching, share this out. But I challenge you to start thinking it in terms of what is going on a weekly basis. For some of us who are business owners, entrepreneurs who work for ourselves, it's helpful to have that kind of structure. I actually the reason I'm a little bit late coming on to see you guys is I just finished a client meeting, and so one of my clients is a business owner. So conversation with somebody like that is quite different because there's a lot of moving parts on the business side. But as you guys know, hi Thomas, good to have you here, is that all of that gets brought up into the personal finance world. So I challenge you, for my new viewers and my consistent ones too, is to think about what can you streamline in your financial life. And I like to call this a basic foundation, right? I like to have my foundation taken care of so that I can go do what I want to do, right? And not have to worry that my bills aren't paid, that I'm not tracking in terms of where my goals are, and I know where my income is coming from, and I have a peace of mind. So that's my message for you today. Now, you guys know that part of the Money Dates and overall discussions is for me to share an interesting topic with you. So I'm going to do that. We're talking about buckets of monies, right? I wish I had a little bucket here to show you, but I don't. I just want you to visually picture that. But before I get into the actual discussion of buckets, I want to remind you this one. I want you to pause for a moment and reflect and look back at and think about what has taken place over the last 7 days in your life that has been a great kind of moment, right? Because I think, and I call these kinds of situations or reflections a money win. It's more of a gratitude, but I found a cute name for it. So, and the reason it's a money win is because if you think about whatever it is, so mine, and I'll share mine in a minute, let me just finish this thought. Because, my friends, it's just so easy to get carried away with mundane, everyday kind of things, with work, with family, with friends, with kids, with businesses, and not give yourself this moment, right, this opportunity to be grateful and thankful for what you have and what's going on. So, and I think, and I strongly believe that everything we do ties in very closely to our personal finances, how we react and where we spend our money, how we save. All of this is a big, gigantic circle. And so if we at least start reflecting back and saying, look, this was a positive moment in my life. Just do it once a week. See how train yourself. See how that changes. I do this on a daily basis, so it's more intense and and involved. But I challenge you to share your money wins. So in a chat, let me know what you've done really well. It could be a silly thing as maybe reading 10 pages a day, and that's actually been one of the things I've been really consistent. It's not my money win, but because I've been practicing for a while, but at least reading 10 pages a day before I go to bed at night. So my money win is this, and I've shared this out, but I feel like it's not just this week's money win because I keep on thinking about it. So I've started with Main Street Financial Planning 12 years ago earlier this month, and it's been quite an interesting journey for me as far as, what I've accomplished, people that I worked with, what I'm thinking to do. And so I'm extremely grateful, beyond measure for the opportunity I had to do, what I've done and what I'm yet set to do. So I don't think I can describe as that being my money win for the week. It's probably a money win for the last 12 years, but it certainly is rewarding and it's satisfying to see, what has taken place. By any means, it has not been an easy journey, but it's been fun and exciting. So those are the kinds of things that I want you to think about, okay? But it starts with small things, one at a time, and it just builds up on the top of it. So as you guys watching, and if you're watching live, let me know what it is. I'm always curious what people are grateful for. And if you're watching in replay, please comment. I'd love to see what are you all thinking. So with that in mind, I'm going to dive into the actual topic. So buckets of monies. This is an interesting concept. There's a lot of research that has been done on this concept. It's a concept. So don't think that I have buckets here in my office that I'm able to share with you. I decided that I'm not even going to share a diagram with you. I'm just going to talk because I want you to get a concept. I can draw a picture for you later. Maybe I'll post it on my timeline later. But I want you to think about this. And the reason for the buckets of monies is because it allows me, particularly, right, when working with clients or even for myself, is to kind of have a structure. Because the idea, my friends, is that your money needs to work for you. So if you have these buckets, right, AKA known as maybe your various accounts, checking, savings, investments, they have designated purpose. So I am going to talk about 3 buckets today. Hi, Lori. Good to have you here. I tell you, something is strange with this live today. The Facebook interface is quite different, and the comments are coming in like dark blue, and it's hard for me to read. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to press through. So I'm sorry if I can't see your name, but I welcome everybody on. Okay, so what I want to put into your mind today and take away from this is that we need to put our money to work. But what we need to do first and we've talked about this already today on the money date and every money date we have, is we need to re-establish and reset what our goals are, okay? So based on that, right, and the goals, financial goals, my friends, that's not just I wish I'm gonna, do this or I'm gonna do that. No, a financial goal is a very specific goal. If it's, example would be, I wanna buy a car, or I'm going to buy a car, it costs $20,000 and I'm going to do it in 2019. That's a very specific goal. You know your target date, you know how much it costs. So the goals actually spread out into 3 categories. You have short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. The same applies for buckets. So I'm going to start talking about each of these buckets and what is prudent to have and to think about. How do you set up a structure? So bucket number 1. So think about what is going to take place in the next 3 years that you may need to have funds for. One of the biggest components of that bucket 1 should be your emergency reserves. You know, guys, that I beat you up to death about having proper emergency reserves in place. So bucket 1 is going to have partially funding for that particular target. So emergency reserves goes in that. And then whatever, an example that I gave earlier, buying a car next year, if you have the money allocated for that, that would be your bucket 1. Now, when I think about a bucket 1, so if I can draw just a visual for you, that means that money that we have allocated for those particular goals is not going to be invested in anything crazy. It's really a lot of times just a savings account. A savings account, a CD, a money market. So something that's really safe and secure, because our timeline is short. We only have 3 years. We don't want to lose because our goals are closer and we're gonna need the funds, okay? The reason for emergency fund is because that needs to be liquid. So now, if you start to think about, if you got that structured, right? And for a lot of clients, it works like this. Most of us have bucket 1 in place. Most of us have bucket 3 in place, and then like bucket 2 is the one that's missing, because a lot of times we don't see this timeline, right, between long-term and short-term goals, and so we miss out on thinking about, well, what is going to happen in the next 3 to 7 years, right? And we don't think that is something that we need to focus in terms of saving. So bucket number 2 is a bucket where you would allocate your specific accounts. It could be if you're in the phase of retirement and you're getting closer and you need to have those accounts in that bucket, that's fine. But most likely it would be something like buying a next car in the next 5 years, right? Maybe traveling. Maybe you're saving up to buy a house. Maybe you're saving up to buy a business. I don't know, but you can have a lot of different goals that go into that bucket. And so what that means is that, remember I talked about bucket 1 having very boring kind of savings in it, right? The bucket 2 now gets a little bit more exposure because it has time. It has time to grow. It has time to give you the returns that you need. I'm not talking today about specific investments or allocation, right? The recipe inside the bucket, but I'm going to give you an idea what could be in there. So bond funds are typical, right? Municipal bond funds, if you want to get a little specific. Now, it's getting a little bit more aggressive from our bucket 1, because again, we have time. You can put individual bonds. CDs are also appropriate. Now, sometimes if our timeline is a little bit on the longer side, then we can talk about putting a certain amount of stocks, right? Stocks, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, so that bucket actually keeps growing, because there's not much growth that happens with those safe type of investments, right? So again, the idea is that we have time for it to grow, okay? Now that we've got the bucket 2 in place, and so the progression of how you think about where to begin and how to save in each of those buckets is this. Obviously, I want you to take care of bucket 1. At least I want you to have emergency reserves set up to a proper levels, right? We always talk about at least 3 months worth of living expenses, and it gets even higher for some of you who are on variable income. Bucket 2 would be the next one for you to focus. And then of course the bucket 3. So most of us have bucket 3 in place in some shape or form. And I'll give you an example. And bucket 3 would be our time horizon of like 10 years plus, right? And so for most of us, that's our retirement funds. So think about what kind of investments, right? What kind of accounts do you actually have that are specifically targeted for your retirement, right? And so with that in mind, that should be one of the buckets that you take the most risk with. So if you, after watching tonight or later when you get a chance, log into your account and see how that account is particularly structured, right? If you have a couple of them. But I want you to think about it. This is really, the buckets also allow us to assess how much risk you want to take. So in the example of bucket 3, where we have a lot of time until we're going to need it, we can take more risk. We should be invested in the stock market. We should be taking risk. We should be growing the money. This is the whole idea of having these buckets. So Jeff wants to know is how much to keep in bucket 2 versus bucket 3. It is not, I don't have a specific formula in terms of which one gets what. It really more ties in around what your goals are, right? So or maybe perhaps when you look at your goals, and we'll talk about this later, is that if you don't have enough things that are, or not on your horizon in the next 5 years, but your goals are more for the longer run, then maybe you don't need to have a whole lot in your bucket 2. But I always still advocate. Bucket 2 in my mind, Jeff, also would be like taxable savings. So, you know, retirement accounts versus taxable savings. I would always think of your taxable savings as being earmarked in the bucket 2, because there's always going to be something that you're gonna want to do. Hi Leslie, good to have you here. Golly, I don't know, I wish they can change this font. I'm sorry, hard to see. And so I hope that makes a little bit of sense. I don't have a specific number or formula because it is based on that, and it's very individual for every person. So with the bucket 2 in mind, that's all kind of a long term. So when you're thinking, like, you're going through your mind thinking, well, what am I going to put in bucket 3, right? Because that's my retirement stuff. It could be your IRA account, it could be your 401k, or whatever other retirement plans you have at work, right? Your TSP, for example. Some of you work for the federal government, and so that's the type of plan you get at work. So longer term stuff goes in bucket 3. And so in terms of kind of setting that structure, I want you just to start thinking about what are you trying to accomplish, right? And the best answer for that is that you want your money to be working for you. Hi Jim, welcome. You're watching live from Italy. Good to have you here. Where's my cappuccino? Or actually, I'm sorry, I don't want cappuccino. I'm hungry for dinner, so I'll take some pasta. I hope you've got some for me. So yes, so buckets supposed to help you see clearly where are you going to save your money, right? What are your targets going to be, and how you're going to allocate your actual investments. Allocation is a fancy word. Is wine? Yes, I'll take some wine too. White, please. Thank you very much. And so yes, allocation is a fancy term for what's the recipe, what's the breakdown between stocks, bonds, cash, and all kinds of other investments. So that's kind of the description of what the buckets are. I challenge you to start thinking about your overall money in those kinds of timelines. I know sometimes we always just have to start from kind of the scratch in the beginning. Thank you, Jeff. I think 3 glasses is going to be too much, but I'll take 1. So with closing for tonight's show, I wanted to share a quote with you. You guys know I love quotes. And so it kind of, since we were talking about buckets, I thought this was somewhat interesting. So it's a quote by Christopher Rice, and it says that every day is a bank account. No one is rich, no one is poor. We get 24 hours a day. And so it's up to you what you're going to do with those 24 hours a day. So I kind of think that this is very closely related, is how you decide and what you decide to put in your buckets when you're thinking about putting your money to work. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope this is useful. Share it out, and I'll see you next week.